Thank you so much, Gabby. And it is wonderful to be here. And I'm really privileged to be part of this, because for me, collaboration is the key, and collaboration is the answer to a lot of our challenges, I think, that we face globally around prisons. So just to tell you a little bit about myself, like I say, my name's Sarah Lewis. I've worked about 20 years in prisons now, in terms of working on culture work. So we focus very heavily on how do we create inclusive, meaningful, effective culture within prison to reduce social harm and promote social good and create safer communities. So we do that through our training. So we have a number of kind of online courses that support practitioners in the field. We do culture work in prisons, we do prevention work in schools, and we also work internationally. So we've worked in a number of different places and had the privilege of meeting a lot of really passionate people. So today's very short session, and I've got to keep to task because I'm one of those people that just keeps on talking, to really think about collaboration. And I guess my experience is collaboration, but maybe sharing some of the challenges that we maybe face as a community. I think just before we do that, just framing this talk within the context of our campaign that we launched back at the end of February, and RW is part of that as well, is called Justice 2.0. So Justice 2.0 is, I guess, calling for an upgrade to justice. So if we imagine our current state of play is Justice 1.0, for us, there's something about letting go of some of our practices, cultures, habits, attitudes, and very much promoting a kind of compassionate, courageous, trusting environment for the future. And collaboration is the heart of that, really, not only in terms of us working alongside those with experience of offending, but also working as a collective, as a whole system, and providing a really kind of integrated space. So that's a little bit about me. And if you want to be involved, the whole idea of Justice 2.0 is it is co-defined, co-created, and co-owned. So have a think about, what does an upgrade look like for you? Post it relentlessly, get together, talk to people in your community about it, get in touch with us if you want some resources. And certainly follow us on TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Blue Sky, if you want to learn a little bit more about it, or visit our website. But to move and focus then on collaboration, this cake was how I imagined my relationship with the prison service when I first went in, after getting very inspired with Norwegian prisons and kind of quality practice around culture. I went into a prison that was really, really struggling culturally, with the main aim of changing the culture, and naively thought that I was going to mix in real well. I was going to be welcomed and treated in a really, really positive way. The reality was that I just sat on the mixture, essentially, and that's because people were in a really tough place. They were in survival mode, they were working with a lot of violence, they were dealing with a lot of drugs and weapons and gang issues, and the relationships had really eroded. And so with that, no one really trusts anyone, unless they were very, very familiar with one another, but they certainly weren't going to trust this relatively crazy woman that kept talking about Norway, previous academic who doesn't have an understanding, and didn't really want to kind of get to know me. So for the first 3 months of that, I'm going to say collaboration in its loosest terms, I was pretty much dismissed and ignored. And with these kind of classic eye rolls when you walk into a wing and ask for a room to be opened up, this kind of like I was a burden and a thorn in their side, really. And I think a lot of the time I was like, wow, that's just, they're so rude. This is, they're not making my life very easy. But I think I underestimate the role I had to play in that, and to recognize their context and to understand with empathy and compassion that they were in a really tough place. And so I relentlessly showed up, irrespective, I guess, of some of those early knockdowns. But for 3 months, I invested in relationships, which we don't generally get the pleasure or funding to do. But within this project, relationships was so key to it. So in some senses, I kind of thought, if I keep going, then hopefully through time, I'm going to be mixed in with the recipe, and we will create a magic cake and collaborate and and create some real human flourishing at best, really. As I kind of went further into the kind of belly of the prison beast, I then realized that actually it's a little bit like this. And I kind of thought everyone else fits in, I guess, to this culture that I don't even know if I want to kind of connect with in terms of, you know, at its worst, quite a harmful and toxic culture that was quite exclusive, you know, it was quite discriminatory and problematic. But what I sensed was that when you get into survival mode in some prison environments, you retreat completely and you stay in your silos, so silo-based working. And so you've got your education department that does their work, and you have your NGOs who do their work, but everyone is literally like this kind of ingredients. And exactly like it's just been said, we got to think about not only about us showing up to this with an open heart and empathy about what might be where people are at in terms of their space, but also it's important to create a platform, i.e. a bowl, that can enable us to mix and understand each other so that we can create something magic. So I wanted to kind of get down some of the kind of key challenges that I guess I've faced along the way, and some of the things that maybe might help in terms of, I guess, this insight. But I think sometimes I certainly got quite distracted about fitting in. And I think there's this natural sense in everyone to want to belong in some kind of way. And we belong to the organizations that we have, and we've got loads of energy. And at GTB, we are really passionate about culture change and reform and people and relationships. But when you go in, you always want to be invited to the party. Yeah. And a lot of the time, I feel that we are this kind of bolt-on approach where we go in and we don't fully integrate, a bit like that cake mixture. We don't fully integrate into the nuts and bolts of the prison, mainly because our contracts may be quite short term, maybe because we kind of get put off by the way in which we may be approached by some people who may be quite mistrustful of us. But I guess there's something there that we can get really focused on wanting to fit in, and maybe even sometimes compromising our own culture and our own values by doing so. And that real attention to how we can integrate ourselves into a prison and how we can build those relationships and really invest in the beginning of a collaboration so that we are able to work effectively. There's also a fight with funding, which again was mentioned previously. And I think a lot of the time that creates a competition. And if you frame that within, I guess, neoliberalism, this kind of competitive nature is encouraged, I guess, particularly in the UK and I'm sure elsewhere. And so we're fighting for funding, and therefore, and the funding is getting smaller. So in some senses, this survival that we've created is almost, we become quite protective of our ideas. We become quite closed, and with that, collaboration becomes really difficult, because if we collaborate, there's a vulnerability about that. We got to give our ideas, our products, we have to have some kind of gift that we kind of share, and that be reciprocal, and that being created in a really trusting context. So I think the less the funding gets, the more we become kind of protectionists, and how we can, attending to our relationships and thinking about where we are in our relationships, I think is really important. I think also with collaboration, and we have different languages and different visions. So we're kind of heading to we feel that we may be heading to different places. And we are have strategic priorities in how to get there. And we can either have literally different languages, or even be speaking different languages across different organizations that operate in the same country. So I think there's something there about just, again, spending a bit of time about how might we have a shared vision? What can we all sign up for? And it could be something simple. We want to support the development of the people that live here, or we want to support rehabilitation, or we want to collaborate and be more inclusive and create an inclusive environment here. So it's about having that shared goal, and also us understanding where are our super strengths, like in collaboration. And this is why we love working with RW. They've got some brilliant skills and assets, and we've got some great skills and assets. And between us, once we get to know those things and understand them, we are stronger as a collective. Yeah, we are stronger as a tribe. And we can see that in nature, yeah. We can see that when we think about the savannah, when we think about migration in terms of animals, people walk around in tribes because there's a form of protection there. And I think the landscape is becoming a lot more challenging. And so with that, it's about how do we connect together? So my proposal, I guess, is instead of us really thinking about culture in a very insular way, this is our GTB culture and this is what we feel. For me, there's something about how can we be more open with our culture so that we are almost compassionate disruptors to prison. You know, when we think about being a bridge, we're going over that bridge and we're importing our culture into that prison. And invariably, whether it's NGOs, not-for-profits, charities, those organizations, they're generally characterized by having big hearts, lots of energy, lots of hope. And we're sometimes going into prisons that don't have any of that, you know, at worst, or have lost that along the way due to the challenges that they're facing in terms of their funding and their retention issues and the harm that might be happening in their prisons. So for me, there's something about standing up. There's, you know, Brené Brown talks about when we want to belong, we don't necessarily want to fit in because that changes who we are. It's also about standing up for who we are, but being really compassionate and importing a culture that is going to hopefully be infectious in some kind of way, because generally energy is infectious. And if we can maintain that energy and have structures around us that help us stay well, not burn out, address the precarious trauma, reflective practice, all of these things will help us maintain the energy we need to go in there and maybe demonstrate a culture that is a lot more accepting and a lot more supportive, so that we can start making changes. And so instead of us just providing, it's quite transactional, isn't it? We're going to provide a service. It's about partnership. It's about a dance. It's about love. It's about sharing challenges. It's about setting expectations. Sometimes we've become quite transactional because we have to kind of, you know, beat to the kind of drum of prisons. But I think there's just something about how we can evolve and how we can adapt so that we maintain our level of identity, and also positively influence those that are in prison and those that work and lead prisons. What we also know from research is that hope lies in the third sector. So we did a piece around probation, and they basically said that a lot of people leave the service in order to work in charities because that is where hope is situated, and people are attracted to hopeful and optimistic environments if they want to make a difference. So I think being, you know, showing gratitude for that every day. I'm really grateful that I have a team that build up my hope, that we do work that builds up my hope. And so I can go into prisons and be compassionate and show up for them. But it is a service. And I guess sometimes, a lot of the time, we kind of say, well, this is what we expect from you, prison. Whereas for me, it's about let's understand where they're at. Let's understand the challenges that they're facing. So for me, there's something about shifting our perspective, but there's also something about supporting the shift of their perspective so that we create an effective culture of collaboration. So this is Justice 2.0's kind of mission. Again, it's about kind of shared mission, which basically says if you believe in kind of compassionate approaches that are kind of strengths-based, research-informed, if you have courage and you want to make a difference, then it is about empowering people to do that and owning that. So be kind, be brave, and belong. And this idea that by connecting, we can build energy and we can build momentum. So we can refuel between one another rather than us being competitors. And we can do that in lots of different ways. So ourselves and RW are heading up the Champions community. Again, it's about networks. It's about spaces where people can connect up. The Growth Alliances, and again, focusing on if you are really keen to change culture and you're an early adopter of that idea that you want to change culture across the criminal justice system, we focus only on those individuals at the Growth Alliance. It's also about giving people the resources to do that. So we've created, I guess, 7 quite bite-sized courses that are for kind of Gen Zs to kind of pick up and get inspired, internationally kind of contributions around different topics like how to build relationships, how to repair relationships, how to work more effectively together, how to change culture, how to reflect on practice, all the things that we might need to really help and provide the resources for people to change a culture. And then I guess in the final minutes, just talking a little bit about the growth app and the ambitions around that. So a growth app ultimately is an ecosystem in its own right. So the idea is that we onboard communities in England currently, so 1,700 NGOs, charities that we have within our criminal justice space. We onboard those individuals alongside any charities that work generally with people in the community. And it's a bit like TripAdvisor. I come out of prison, I put in my postcode, I think about all the things that I might need in terms of relationships, well-being, holistically, what can help me grow. It creates a roadmap for me, and then it signposts me to all of the services that are in my local community that I rate, and I highlight my impact that from those services that then drive quality practice. But what it does also do is it connects people up. It connects up providers and guides together, how we could share practice on a much more kind of easier level. If at the end of the year I've got 5 stars and I've done a great job, what are the other organizations that have got 5 stars and done really well? What can I learn from them? If I got 3 stars this year as an organization, what are the things that I can learn from other organizations that can help me increase my service that I'm providing people? How we can onboard families so that collaboration can be broader, how we can engage governments or researchers through investment, whether that's around partnerships or whether that's around investor partnerships. But also maybe, you know, there's a role within our corporate sector. How might they, through ethical and corporate responsibility, how might they demonstrate their social good through a reward scheme for those that are on the app, or when they do something well, or whether that's around funding that ecosystem more broadly, so that we can distribute funding across those that are part of the kind of growth alliance. So that is our kind of ideas for the future. The growth app is a minimal viable product, so the first version of it is literally just come out last week. But the idea is that we can use this across the globe. And can you imagine us all creating an ecosystem where we can communicate and share good knowledge and learn quickly, but also effectively, so that we can drive quality and stick together and maintain some hope. So for me, I kind of think, let's be cake, you know. I found this image and just thought it is about us integrating into prisons. It is about us having a role, but not just a role in terms of delivering our service, but also a role that might offer hope more broadly, or feelings of optimism, or an energy about ourselves. And when we do that, good things happen, you know, good things happen, and we can create things that are really kind of creative. And what I have found is that once you get accepted, and once you kind of highlight that you're safe and you're reliable and you do what you say you're going to do, the loyalty you get from prison staff, leaders and residents, I think is something that no other, you know, there's no other feeling like it. So if you're struggling with it, persevere. If you're struggling with it, get in touch. But yeah, I think it starts with us. We're the secret ingredients that's going to allow the people in prison to flourish. So that's me.
Thank you so much, Sarah. I think it's an excellent inspiration for our conversations today. And collaboration, co-creation, and co-ownership, as you said, resonates quite well to what we are trying to achieve with this project, and also beyond with our activities individually. So I'm not sure, can you stay a bit longer? I'm just asking if, because there will be the presentation of our mapping exercise, and also there will be the discussions afterwards. So, and there is a Q&A session. It would be great. And also if you can stay for the breakout rooms, that would be perfect. But we understand if you have to go. So the next point on the agenda is the presentation of our findings of the survey that we conducted within this project. My colleague at Richtungswechsel, Momina Khurshid, will be presenting it with me. So I will just share the screen again